Bang, bang, bang. The sound of someone slamming against my door at 6:30 a.m. On a Saturday, I stumbled out of bed, half-dressed, and opened the door to find her, Dana Ellison, the self-proclaimed HOA president. She's a big woman with a fake blonde bob and a glare that could melt steel. You need to move that boat. Now, she screamed before I could even say hello.
Are you kidding
I stood
me?
there in disbelief as she slapped a bright orange violation sticker on my boat like it was a crime scene. What the
did
hell
you
is
do
this?
it?
I asked.
That's none
Her
of your
reply,
business.
you're in violation of HOA rules. But that was just the beginning of what would turn into a full-out war. And trust me,
You're in
it ended in a
violation
way
of
you won't
HOA
believe.
rules.
Dana Ellison wasn't just the HOA president. She was the authority in Sunset Harbor, or at least she thought she was. A woman who clearly had too much time on her hands and a desperate need to control every little thing. That morning, as she stood in front of me, I could see the smugness radiating from her oversized frame. Your dock is in violation of Section 12. 3B, she said, her voice dripping with self-importance. I tried to process her words. Section 12? 3B. What the hell was that? I glanced at the bright orange sticker, now plastered on my boat, and tried to stay calm. Ma'am, I've had this boat here since I moved in. It's part of the property I bought, she sneered, looking me up and down with that same dismissive glare. This isn't just your property. The water is community space. That boat stays, or you'll face fines. Big ones. I wasn't a confrontational guy, but something about her tone, that fake authority she carried like a badge, made my blood boil. I wasn't just some random guy to push around. Her next words made it clear. This wasn't about rules, it was about power, and she'd chosen me to make an example out of. But what she didn't know was that she'd just picked the wrong person to mess with. Over the next few days, Dana's tactics grew bolder. She wasn't just lurking at the end of my driveway anymore, she was watching me. Every time I stepped out to grab the mail or take out the trash, I'd catch her peering out from behind the curtains of her small house down the street. Her surveillance was becoming more obvious, and the passive-aggressive notes started showing up on my door. One morning, I found a letter that read, "This is your final warning to remove the boat from community waters. Non-compliance will result in escalating fines." The handwriting was a mess, and the letter looked like something hastily printed off her home computer. But the message was clear. Dana was on a mission to make my life hell. I could feel the tension mounting. I was starting to regret ever moving to this quiet little neighborhood. But I wasn't about to back down from a woman who thought she could bully me with fake threats and cheap stationery. The following Monday, I caught Dana doing something I never expected. She was trespassing on my property. She stood at the edge of my dock, snapping photos of my boat like I was a criminal. I watched from the window, furious but still trying to keep my cool. She was taking shots from every angle, as though documenting evidence for a trial. I couldn't let it slide. I walked outside, glaring at her as she turned the camera toward me. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my patience wearing thin. "Just gathering evidence for the violation," she said, not even flinching. She was practically smiling as she snapped away. I crossed my arms, trying to stay calm. "You have no right to be on my property. This is my dock, my boat. I'm not violating anything." She raised an eyebrow. "I have every right as HOA president." The smugness in her voice sent a chill down my spine. "I don't care who you think you are, Dana." "This stops now," I said, turning to walk back inside. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that this had gone too far. Then the next morning, I stepped outside to find something I wasn't expecting. Dana had put a huge bright orange violation sticker on my boat again, this time attached to a printed notice. "Unbelievable," I muttered under my breath, ripping the paper off the boat. This was no longer about boat rules, it was personal. She had crossed the line. I called my lawyer friend Rachel, who was a property expert, explaining the situation. After a long pause, she said, "Nathan, most HOA rules can't just arbitrarily fine you like that. Let me look over the documents you got from the property seller, and we'll see if she's pulling a fast one." But as I hung up, something else clicked. Dana wasn't just a bully, she was targeting me specifically. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much her attitude stank of personal animosity. This wasn't about keeping the neighborhood clean. This was about Dana controlling me, making me bend to her will. That thought set something off inside me. This wasn't over. Rachel came over later that afternoon, looking through the property deed and my original HOA documents. After a brief scan, she leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. "This is getting weird. The dock is legally yours, but Dana's actions, uncalled for." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. A sheriff's deputy stood on my porch holding a complaint form. "I'm here because there's been a violation of HOA rules." Dana Ellison called in a complaint. "Are you kidding me?" I asked. "We need to inspect your boat." Standard procedure, he replied, nodding toward the water. I sighed, but didn't want to make things worse. I led him to the dock, showing him the paperwork Rachel had gone over with me. After a brief look, the officer sighed. Your boat's fine, sir. Everything checks out. There's no violation here. I stared at him, frustrated. So, why are you here? He shrugged. She's got a lot of influence in the neighborhood, but this looks like a waste of my time. With that, he left. I stood there watching the officer drive away. Dana's grip on this neighborhood was slipping, but she wasn't going down without a fight, and now I knew I was going to have to stand up to her hard. The next day, everything escalated. I walked out to my dock for my morning coffee to find Dana standing there with a camera snapping pictures of my boat again. This time, there was no pretending it was an outright power grab. She looked up from her lens with a smirk. You can keep ignoring the rules, but it's only a matter of time before I call code enforcement again, she said, her voice low and vindictive. I'd had enough. Dana, this stops today, I said, my voice low and controlled. She laughed, flipping her hair back dramatically. You think you're the first person I've dealt with in this neighborhood? I'll have you fined so many times you'll be begging me to leave. Her words stung, but I wasn't going to back down. Fine me all you want, I said, walking toward the house. But I'll be damned if you run this place into the ground. The moment I stepped inside, I picked up the phone and called Rachel. It was time to start digging into Dana's past, and I was about to find something that would end her reign over Sunset Harbor for good. It was the night of the HOA meeting, and Dana had clearly gone all out. She had a projector set up, a slide deck ready to go, and a wooden gavel in her hand like she was running a courtroom. The whole scene felt like a bad joke. As I entered the community center, I could see the tension in the air. A handful of residents were there, but there was a palpable unease. Dana stood at the front, her chest puffed out like a queen about to make a royal decree. She slammed the gavel down. We're here to discuss Nathan Cole's violation of community standards, she announced, her voice booming. I, as your HOA president, have the right to enforce these rules. This boat, this eyesore, has to go. I couldn't let this stand anymore. I stood up slowly, walked to the front of the room, and spread my property deed on the table. I'd like to speak, I said calmly. The room fell silent. I spread out the deed for everyone to see. This, I said, pointing at the document, shows that I own Sunset Harbor Lake. The entire lake. I have all the rights to this property. Dana froze, her smug expression faltering for the first time. The silence in the room was deafening as people leaned forward trying to process what I had just said. Dana looked like she was about to burst into flames. That's ridiculous, she shouted, her face turning red. This is community property. You can't just claim ownership of the lake. I didn't flinch. It's right here, I said, pointing to the legal documents spread out before everyone. I inherited this property from my grandfather. He bought the entire lake and most of the land around it. And now, I'm the rightful owner. I laid out the survey maps, the property records, and the legal documents that proved everything. I even had the full breakdown of the development plan showing that Dana had been living in a house she didn't even own while pretending to enforce rules she had no authority to impose. The crowd murmured, confusion, turning to realization. Dana's foundation of lies was crumbling before their eyes. And just as I thought I had the room, Dana shot up from her seat. You can't do this, she yelled, voice cracking. I was elected. By who? I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. You weren't elected by anyone. You appointed yourself. Dana's face twisted with panic as more people began to ask questions. Her power was slipping away, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Dana was desperate, but the evidence was too overwhelming. The room was buzzing with disbelief, some people pulling out their phones to record the meltdown. Everything you've been saying is a lie, I said, meeting Dana's eyes. You've been making up rules and pretending to be in charge. And now, it's over. She stood there, stammering, trying to regain some form of authority, but she was losing ground fast. You can't just take over like this, she shouted, but her voice lacked the conviction it once had. I took a deep breath and looked around at the room of residents. We need to vote, I said. I'm giving you all the opportunity to choose real leadership. No more self-appointed tyrants. Dana's face turned a sickly shade of pale as I held up a new sign I had made earlier that day. It read, Official property of Nathan Cole, owner of Sunset Harbor Lake. I slammed it into the ground next to Dana's homemade signs, marking the official end of her reign. The room erupted into chaos, but this time it was in my favor. People were questioning Dana's authority, demanding answers, and several residents were already moving toward the exit. Dana's once iron grip on the community was gone, and it was clear she had no idea how to salvage it. She tried to call for an adjournment, but the room wasn't listening anymore. With no support left, Dana's facade finally crumbled. You can't do this. She shrieked one last time as she gathered her papers, but no one was listening. It was over. The meeting was officially over, but the buzz didn't stop. People were still whispering in small groups, some laughing, others shaking their heads in disbelief. I stood there, letting the weight of the moment sink in. Dana's grand authority had been torn down piece by piece. For the first time since I'd moved to Sunset Harbor, the neighborhood felt like it was truly mine. Evelyn, the elderly woman who had warned me about Dana in the beginning, came over and patted me on the back. "You did good, Nathan," she said with a smile. "Took a lot of guts to stand up to her like that. We needed someone like you." Several other residents approached me, offering their thanks and support. "It's about time someone stepped up," one man said. "We've all been waiting for something like this." I felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief. This was the end of a chapter, but it was also the beginning of something new for the community. As I stood there, the truth of it hit me. I hadn't just defeated Dana. I had freed the neighborhood from her grip. It wasn't just my victory, it was theirs too. The fallout from the meeting was swift. Dana tried to spin her lies one last time, but it was clear no one was buying it anymore. The residents of Sunset Harbor had seen the truth for themselves, and they were not going to stand for her brand of chaos any longer. A few days later, I got a call from Rachel, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. "I've got good news," she said. "I spoke with the county. They're looking into Dana's actions. She can't just fabricate a homeowners association and start fining people. They're going to investigate her for fraud." I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. Dana had manipulated this entire neighborhood, and now the consequences were coming down hard on her. Rachel went on. "Oh, and it gets better. Since you own the lake and land under most of the houses here, the residents who've been paying her ridiculous fees might be able to get some of that money back." "Good. Let them feel the weight of her lies," I said, smiling. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like Dana was getting everything she deserved. A week later, I sat on my dock again, coffee in hand, as the sun began to set over Sunset Harbor Lake. The water was calm, peaceful, exactly what I had wanted when I moved here. I felt a sense of finality, knowing that the neighborhood was now free of Dana's influence. There was no more drama, no more chaos, just peace. As I looked out over the lake, I noticed a small crowd gathering by the community center. It was a casual get-together, nothing special, just neighbors hanging out, talking, and enjoying the lake that Dana had tried to claim as hers. It felt right. Evelyn waved to me from across the shore, and a few others followed suit. The sense of camaraderie that had been absent for so long was back. It felt like a weight had been lifted off all of us. But as I sipped my coffee, a beat-up U-Haul truck pulled into the neighborhood. It was Dana moving out. She didn't even look in my direction as the movers loaded up her belongings. Her face was drawn a shell of the confident, manipulative woman who had once run the neighborhood. The truck pulled away, and with it, Dana's hold over Sunset Harbor vanished. I smiled to myself, watching her leave. There was no malice, no triumph in my heart, just the satisfaction of knowing I had done the right thing. I had fought for my peace, for the truth, and for this community. As the truck disappeared around the corner, I turned back to the lake, a peaceful, quiet settling over me. This was my home, my lake, and my community now. The legacy my grandfather had left me was more than just property. It was the power to protect it and make it a place worth living. And as for Dana, well, sometimes the best revenge is simply watching someone like her walk away. I leaned back, letting the calm of the water and the sound of laughter in the distance wash over me. This chapter was over, but the story of Sunset Harbor was just beginning, and I had a front row seat,